In one of the online lectures, we finished up, wrapped up most of Baroque art. So when we were last meeting 2 weeks ago, we were looking at Baroque art in Flanders, which is Catholic, and we were with Rubens, right? Mr. High Drama, big muscular guys lifting the cross of Christ. And that is wrapped up in online, talking more about other artists from the Spanish Netherlands, from Flanders. And then moving on to talk about their enemies in the 8 Years' War, which is Protestant Holland, or the United Provinces of the Netherlands. It's the same thing, right? And the 8 Years' War, 1568 to 1548, was fought over religion. The Spanish kings of Spain, the Habsburg kings of Spain, wanted to mandate that everyone in the Low Countries practice Catholicism. This was well after Martin Luther, and there were quite a few Protestants there. And this caused the Protestant area, which is primarily the northern part of that, to split away from the Catholic area. Even though prior to that they were getting on just fine. Right? When the mandate came, some people said, no way, and even the Protestants who lived in the Catholic area migrated to the north, where they could continue to be Protestant. Right? So the 80 Years' War came about because the Spanish king, Philip IV's grandfather, Philip II, had mandated Catholicism on all people. Right? That led to the 80 Years' War. Okay? Now, the 80 Years' War decimated Spain. They lost, eventually, but they entered the 80 Years' War being the most powerful, probably the most powerful country in all of Europe. And they left the 80 Years' War being one of the brokest countries in all of Europe. Holland, on the other hand, the enemy, entered being pretty well off and left being fantastically well off. It benefited their economy. It's a strange paradox. They're incredibly wealthy. To this day, to the Dutch, the 17th century is called the Golden Age of Dutch history. It is the one era they look back at as when we were the most powerful. It is the era of the Dutch East India Corporation. They ruled the 7 seas. Right? They are reclaiming land from the ocean using Dyson windmills. Right? They are as powerful and as prosperous as they can be. People walk through Dutch houses and comment from other countries that everybody owns paintings. Have you buy paintings if you're starving? You know, if you're having trouble making ends meet? No. Everybody, even people in farmhouses, could afford paintings. Right? So, this is an incredibly wealthy time, an incredibly prosperous time in Holland. And an outcome of that is that, and this is covered on wood, that we see artists in Baroque Holland specializing in one kind of art. Because so many people are buying, it's sort of a standard business model, right? I think it's sort of like the Abercrombie and Fitch model versus the Gap model. Okay? I can't buy clothes at Abercrombie, they make me look stupid. That's the one. But the Gap will cover up to you and me. They're going to cover everybody. So if you think about the Abercrombie and Fitch model, then it's like target an audience and do it really well. I feel that you should never buy Chinese food from a pizza place. Right? You do something well. Okay? Dutch artists are special in one kind of art because they're going to think, I'm going to do well in that one market. So Jacopo Wellsell paints nothing but landscape. That's all he does. There isn't a single painting out there by Jacopo Wellsell that's not in landscape painting. Or if there is, it's like one in 100. Right? Peter Koch, still landscape. That's all he does. Still landscape. Different kinds of still lives, food pieces, musical pieces, but they're only still lives. Judith Leister, over in the National Museum of Women in the Arts, does these musical pieces, what the Dutch called highlight pieces. Right? Musicians having a great time. There she is. There's one of them. The self-portrait stuck in there as well. She also painted portraits, but primarily this was her stock in trade. We got horrible lighting in these cases. The blue stuff is reflection. I don't think that's part of the thing. Fred Hall worked with this almost exclusively. Did a few images like Leicester's concert, but the majority were portraits. Artists are specializing in order to target part of this market, right? All of these artists, Leicester, Hall, Rousdall, Clark, before, all of them are in the city of Harlem, right after which the region of New York is named. Remember that New York was New Amsterdam. That's part of this broad prosperity of Holland during this time period, was the settling of New Amsterdam. Right? They are all in Harlem. Rembrandt, who we're going to talk about today, is in Amsterdam, which is the capital of the United Provinces. Right? It's not the capital, it's the primary city. The capital is the city of The Hague, which is still the capital. The Hague, we're not going to look at the artists in The Hague. There were, in addition to cornering part of the market, they would also corner geographic part of the market. Right? Harlem was right next to Amsterdam, easily accessible. It was accessible. It was sort of like living in Germantown and working here. You know, it's very easy to get back and forth. There were boats that took 20 minutes, and that's now less, you know, on the 20-minute mark between Amsterdam and Harlem. Okay? Rembrandt is active in Harlem, in Amsterdam. Right? The biggest city, the largest art market. And he moved there when he's about 25 years old. He comes from a small milling town called Leiden, which is a university, even today. Moved there when he's about 25. His whole plan is to make it in the big city as an artist. Right? And his original plan in Amsterdam is to make it as a history painter. A painter of historical and biblical themes. A specialist in that. And his reason is that history painting is considered in the 17th century to be the hardest kind of painting to do. And therefore makes the painter the most noble, the most special. He charges more for it for all these reasons. Right? So he wants to be a history painter. Now why was it the most noble? Because if you're a history painter, not only do you have to paint landscape, not only do you have to paint still life, not only do you have to paint human figures, animals, all these other things that other people are special at, you guys do all, and do well. But in addition to that, you got to know your history. Right? You've got to do some research as well. So these things make the history painter, I'm trying to buzz everybody else. This is what Rembrandt wants to do. Not easy to break into. So he's listed time. And unlike all the other artists you've seen, Rembrandt does not eventually specialize. He does everything. He tries it all. So he's going to go back to the Ernst model, right? Where he's going to do something for this group over here, something for that group over here, and so we've got portraits by Rembrandt, we've got landscapes by Rembrandt, we've got biblical scenes by Rembrandt, we've got ancient Roman historical scenes by Rembrandt. We even got a still life by Rembrandt, one or two, right? We've got work by Rembrandt in painting. We've got work by Rembrandt in printmaking as well. He is all over the map, right? He's going to make art everywhere. And there are today, about 300 surviving paintings by Rembrandt? Right? 700 surviving prints by Rembrandt? That's something like 1,400 surviving drawings by the guy. He was incredibly productive. So, we're going to look today entirely at Rembrandt, because I think if we can make it to the stage, we should spend some time. Right? You know? He's that well known, right? One of these names, like Leonardo, that you knew probably before coming into this class. Right? So he wants to be a history painter, ends up making some money doing portraits, which are easy enough to get commissions for. Right? Our over life-size painting at the National Gallery shows a man in an Oriental costume that looks very much like a portrait. But it remains a question as to whether or not it is. or whether it's simply a study of costume that Rembrandt is doing to get better at historical scenes. Because you'll notice this is exotic costume. This gives me sort of made-up exoticism. You know, he's got jewels in the hat, he's got fur, he's got another gold chain around the neck, and there's just something about all of them that looks sort of like costume jewelry. You know, like he's dressing these figures up in jokes that he happens to have in a trunk. That sounds bad, he's got jokes in his trunk. Wasn't that a Will Ferrell thing on Saturday Night Live? But anyway, he's got a bunch of props that he's going to use when it comes time to paint history scenes. And in his early career, one of the things we find Rembrandt doing is actually doing a lot of these studies, costume studies, so that when he actually gets around to doing a biblical scene, he doesn't have to set it up anymore. He knows what he's doing, right? So the question remains with this fellow and a lot of these figures in strange costumes, are they portraits? Are they studies for something else? Right? Or not studies in that they reappear somewhere else, but rather Rembrandt getting better, Rembrandt practicing the skills he needs to become a very good history painter. Now that said, Amsterdam is a huge port city. It's got an amazing cosmopolitan populace. It is not all Dutch people. It's a huge Jewish community. There's a huge Eastern Mediterranean community. Right? People have come from all over to live in Holland, and in particular in Amsterdam. So it's not entirely impossible that this guy showed up looking like this in Rembrandt's studio. Altogether likely. Right? We can't write that out. So it remains a question for us. Right? Who is this guy? No question here, it's his wife. Rembrandt often posed people he knew in costumes that gave them a sort of historical ambiance, right? A historical aura. So this is his young wife, Saskia van Allenberg, who was the daughter of a prominent art dealer. Now this marriage for Rembrandt seems incredibly convenient. It connects him with the art world in Amsterdam. He becomes the son-in-law of a very important art dealer that not only can help him to circulate his own work, but can also expose him to work by other artists as they move their way through the art market. He can get up close and personal to a Caravaggio, and he did. Right? A Caravaggio passed through the art market. Rembrandt was at the sale. He didn't buy it, but he made a sketch of it. A Raphael, a famous Raphael, came to Amsterdam. He made a sketch of it. Right? Saskia was his entry to the art world in Amsterdam. It's a great marriage for him. And here she's dressed, again, in sort of slightly exotic clothing. That gold chain around her neck, the veil in her hair, all add a little something extra to the image. He's using her as the basis for this idea of getting better at art. I should mention that Saskia was also, for Rembrandt, an important marriage because her father was stinking rich. Rembrandt's dad ran a mill, right? Ground grain for a living. He was a farmer's son. He was a country bumpkin when he arrived. He attended a year's university in Leiden and dropped out, you know. He's marrying up with Saskia. She's wealthy. He is not. He's moving up the social ladder with this marriage. She brought with her, when they got married, a very substantial dowry. Rembrandt, after marrying Saskia, really didn't even have to work anymore. That's how wealthy Saskia was. Right? He used her money to buy their house, which was big enough to run a studio out of and to teach students in. Right? So it's a big, for him, marrying Saskia was wow. Right? Big thing, like royal wedding, you know, for him. That said, it's worth keeping keeping in mind that while most marriages are arranged anyway, marriages prior to the 20th century were more often than not about love. They were arranged between prominence, and we talked about this a bit, right? Online, we talked about Marie de Medici marrying the King of France. We talked about their daughter, Henrietta Maria, marrying the King of England. We talked about the Habsburgs under Velazquez, or around Velazquez, marrying within the family. Right? Marriages were arranged with the idea of consolidating power or changing one's social status. And were rarely about love. But Rembrandt was really in love with Saskia. This is one of these storybooks. Like, it was probably an arranged marriage at first, but they seem to have gone on, like, famously. And he poses her often, and in allegorical, historical themes. So here she is as the Roman goddess of flowers, Flora, right? The Roman goddess of education. And again, he's using her as a model. It's not really a portrait of Saskia. He's using it as an excuse for getting into these costume studies that will support his dream of becoming a great history painter. And at this point, he's still not 30 years old, right? He was born in 1606, right? No, 1609, so he's like 25 at this point, right? Okay. Absolutely adore her. I need to show you this just because I love this picture. That's Rembrandt, posing as the prodigal son, with Saskia on his lap, as one of the harlots he's going to go hang out with. You know the story of the prodigal son? He's like one of the two sons of a very wealthy landowner. He goes off and he squanders his entire inheritance by gambling and sleeping with prostitutes. But here, Rembrandt paints a self-portrait in the guise of the prodigal son, and his wife in the guise as one of the prostitutes. And he's asking us to join him in a drinking game. That wonderful cup that he holds has lines drawn around it. That's because this was a drinking game. This is like a frat game, where the job was the glass came full, and your job was to drink it to where you think you're going to hit that next line. And stop when you put it down, you're like, oh, good, you got a point, right? And the next guy will try to drink it down to the next line. Oh, you got a point for that, right? It's for drinking game. And he wants us to join him here. And that's one of those wonderful peacock pies that we saw at the very beginning, right? Those big pies with the bird on top. All very sumptuous, you know. I'm bringing this in because not only do I think this is a fantastic picture, it's really fun, right? Rembrandt seems like he's kind of a fun guy in these early years. He's got a great sense of humor, and that's something I'm going to point to in two or three other Rembrandts that we look at, is that he has a sense of humor that if we're not lulled by the dark room and this being after 5 o'clock on a long Monday, these works can be very, very funny. Even though it turns out at the end of his career he was a real dirtbag, which I'm not going to talk a lot about, but he did some things at the end of his life which are not particularly commendable. Right? But here he is, happy Rembrandt, happily married, life up the social ladder, brings a dowry that he can spend. We almost have a sense of him out there squandering, you know, Saskia's millions, if you will, on wine, women, and song. And there she is, almost looking a little bit too proper to be a prostitute on the lap of the prodigal son. Right? 1637, 1638, Saskia gets tuberculosis. Spends 3 years in bed before she dies. Rembrandt has to tend to her in her deathbed. This is an etching. We'll talk more about etchings in a bit. But you can see that there are, in fact, 2 sketches of Saskia here. Sitting in bed. One there, one here, one there. Right? He tended to her through the last 3 years of her life. Rembrandt had a tough go of things. We haven't talked a lot about artistic biographies yet. Rembrandt's life was very, very difficult. Really had a lot of hardship, despite having married well. And Saskia's death hit him incredibly hard. He more or less kind of stopped painting for a while, shortly after she died. And a lot of people think he was going out, he was wandering around doing landscape paintings, turned almost entirely to landscape for a while. People think he's just beat, you know, he doesn't want to go home.
wants to go hang out in nature instead and find something there that he can work with, right? So, late 1630s, for 3 years, Saskia has a waning, depleting illness. By the way, she was never diagnosed with tuberculosis. We just think that's what it was based on the pictures of her, right, that he paints over this 3-year period. The bottom line is she's bedridden for 3 years before she dies, right? So, happy Rembrandt is all over. Oh, I didn't want that to come up yet. Hang on a second. Animations up here. Okay, now, all right. Let's go back to that. There. Okay. This picture is his first major painting after Saskia's death. She dies around 1640-41. And it's a huge commission. It's a group portrait of a militia company. Right? The company of Franz Baninkoff. And Franz Baninkoff is the guy with the orange sash in the center of the picture. He's the captain of this particular squadron, and his lieutenant, whose name I'm not going to bother you with, is in yellow immediately next to him. Right? It is a commissioned group portrait. The figures are life-size, if not a little larger. It's 14 feet 4 across the base, right? Almost 12 feet tall. Right? So I guess they are pretty much roughly life-sized, right? And it's a commission by the people that we see here, each of whom paid to be included in the group portrait. So this is a fairly major commission on Rembrandt's part, right? The question is, being one of the first pictures he's done after the death of Saskia, who is that woman there? It kind of looks like Saskia, doesn't it? Right? The woman down here looks a bit like Saskia. And it could be an homage to her after her death that he's sort of stuck her in here inside of this commissioned work. You'll notice that she's sort of highlighted there. She's wearing this sort of silvery gold color, and it looks as if there's somehow a beam of light that's fallen directly on her. Right? If we get closer to her, she looks a little less like Saskia. She's a little bit fatter, but again, it's a memorial picture. Looking back beyond the times when she was sick and wasting away to where she might have been. Okay. So he's pulled a little tricky one in this group portrait by sticking, I think, a memorial to his wife here. Now, if we look at her more closely, you'll notice that in addition to having this pearl tiara, right, crown on her head, this fancy silver embroidered costume, the yellow silk robe, she's got a chicken tied to her waist, which is something we should ask ourselves, why? What the heck? Why a chicken? Right? And this is something we can actually explain. Let's see what's coming up next. I got the animated a bit goofy, so there she is again. The chicken is, in fact, the chicken's claw, the symbol of this militia guild. So Rembrandt has gotten tricky. This one's on view at the National Gallery as we speak. It's on loan from the Amsterdam Historical Society through the end of the year. By one of Rembrandt's pupils, Govard Flink, another group portrait of this group, of members of this group, and you can see the armorial on the wall that has the chicken's claw on it, right? So she is included there as their symbol, right? And Rembrandt has gotten really fancy on it by making it look very, very much like Saskia. Right? Now, this is one of his most important works. Certainly one of his most famous works is The Night Watch. I want to sort of go through this a little bit closely to look at the different figures here. Remember that apart from her, and probably not the drummer on the right, that the people who are here to paint Rembrandt, to paint their portrait, and would have sat for him in his studio as he made sketches or even just worked on this particular canvas. Okay? Makes me feel kind of sorry for this guy who paid to get his portrait in there and gets sort of photobombed, by the arm of the fellow next to him who is looking the opposite direction, doesn't even realize that he's blocking the view. is this Rembrandt's sense of humor again, right? When you see it, it becomes kind of funny. Hey, it's a group portrait and we don't even get to see this guy. And it's one of two or three different things in this portrait that are actually really funny when you see them. Rembrandt has a sense of humor, and it comes through. This idea of a group portrait is something that we covered online. Frans Hals, who we looked at the very beginning of this lecture, as a portraitist in Haarlem nearby, also did group portraits. And in fact, this was a standing kind of painting, a standing type of painting at the time Rembrandt did it. What Frans Hals did for his group portrait, where again, everybody paid to be included, it's grouped around the leader of the militia guild, the leader of the squadron in an orange sash in the front, his lieutenant immediately next to him, right? These two, here we go. Right, there's the captain, there's the lieutenant, just as we have the captain and the lieutenant here. Right? So it's the same idea as we have with the Frans Hals picture. What Hals does is to show us an annual event that these archers took part in. They were there to protect the city of Haarlem. And every year, the city of Haarlem funded a meal for them, a really sumptuous banquet, where they would choose their leaders for that given year. Right? And they would sometimes have shooting contests where the best marksman would get a prize as well. So Hals shows them at their meal that we've sort of stumbled in on, and they're all turning to look at us at the moment that we know, who are you? Hey, welcome. And it's not standoffish, right? It's not like you've gone into some private club and you don't belong there. There's a sense that they're happy that you're here, right? You're engaged with the scene. Rembrandt takes that idea of not just having them pose, but giving the scene a little bit of narrative, a little story to tell, right? The meal. He takes that a step further. And he arranges the figures, artificially, as if they're arming up to go out and fight, right? They just heard the call to arms, and they're getting together their lances, their muskets, and they're going to go out and defend Amsterdam, right? That's the artifice he brings to the group portrait. And their leader is leading the way, the lieutenant with a sharpened lance in his hand next to him, right? That's what Rembrandt wants us to think about. So he's adding narrative, right? He's giving us a group portrait, but he's making it more interesting than just a bunch of people standing around. And in fact, when the painting went up, in the room where the different militia guilds in Amsterdam met, these guys plus others, somebody said that Rembrandt's picture made the other ones look like a pack of playing cards. Right? You imagine kings and queens of just standing there stiff on playing cards. Rembrandt's was vibrant and lively and did something that no one else had done up to that point. That engagement, that liveliness, that taking one idea, a portrait, and making it into something much more interesting. It's something that we talked about with Velázquez, with Las Meninas, where he takes the commission for a portrait of the king's favorite daughter, the first daughter of his second marriage, and he turns it into a portrait of something much more interesting than that. He includes himself in it, he includes some of his inspirations in it, he includes that wonderful mirror with the king in it, right? He gives it something more than just somebody standing there. Rembrandt's doing the same thing, and he's doing it 20 years earlier, 15 years earlier, right? He's really enlivening the scene. In order to do this, Rembrandt reaches out to your other senses. We've talked about this with Baroque art. Remember the Council of Trent? Now, Rembrandt could care less about the Council of Trent. Couldn't care less about the Council of Trent. Right? Council of Trent's for Catholics. He's a Protestant. Right? But the Council of Trent did say some things that made art kind of vibrant and engaging. It said, just try to reach out to you, just feel through your emotions. It should be dramatic. Right? Rembrandt's picking up on that. He's appealing to your senses, to all of your senses. And we've seen so many Baroque pictures try to do that, where we don't only look at it, we listen to it. We hear it. We smell it. We understand what its texture might be like, the things that the artist has painted. Right? Taste it sometimes. Rembrandt included off to the right the drum player. Probably not one of the portraits, but gives you a sense of sound. You get the sense of the rattle of the muskets, the clanking of the pipes, especially in the back right corner, right? Immediately next to the drummer, you can see, you guys know me well enough, is dogs. I love dogs and pictures. But again, this is Rembrandt being funny, right? The guy doing the drums in the bar, dog is barking at the drummer. Yeah, dogs are. When they hear sounds they don't know, they can start to go crazy, right? And there's no shutting them up. And there's our dog reacting to the drummer. There's no other reason to have this dog here other than to fill a little bit of a compositional void there, but also then in the paint seen some damage through days, right? So we're missing some of the surface. But he's there to get your ears involved, right? In addition to your eyes. Other figures, this guy in the back, sort of begin to inspect their weapons, right? Hey, what's this thing I got, and what's the best thing? You can see he's paying some good attention to that. He knows how to use that lance, and he's getting ready to carry it and put it up over his shoulder, as the others behind him already have. A guy in the foreground loads his musket with great skill. People have looked back at manuals on how to load muskets and say, yeah, this is the way you do it, right? So they're getting ready to go out and march. They've been called to action. More of Rembrandt's humor. Some people don't have a freaking clue, right? I love this guy. He's right behind the main leader. This isn't good. And he doesn't know how to use the bolt action on the thing, right? It's like he's never even seen a gun before. And I hate to think that he paints for his picture as well. Now, he looks a little bit better when we get up close, right? But there's something about it that seems, as he's assessing this, that he's a little bit more concerned about how this actually might all work out, right? In addition to that, if we look directly behind the main pair, we've got this guy here with this reed in his hat. You can tell it's not a portrait because there's no face on it, right? But he's striding forward. He's got one leg out like this. He's got a gun. Okay? Can you read that? Right? And that's his gun coming back here behind Grant Bancroft. Okay? And look what happens. He accidentally shot it. Right? So again, the feel the sound, right? But also making the painting worthwhile in terms of time with, right? This is, I think, what this calls for us. We look at pictures and we go, good pictures reward you for when you spend time with them, you know? And Rembrandt's doing that. He's making the picture worth looking at. So as we read it more closely, as we spend time, I taught art history for 15 years before I saw that gun. Right? First, you had these really crappy, purple tone slides. Sliding over. I never saw that before, right? And then you see it and you go like, that is so cool. Not only has it blown off, and those aren't entirely feathers in his hat, right? Some of that is the smoke from the musket. And you can actually see the flame coming out in the musket. But the guy behind it has sort of saved his life. He's knocked it away. Because he sees what's happening. He hears a before it fires, and he pushes the gun away. So nobody's going to get hurt. Right? It's activated. It's not just a bunch of people standing around. Rembrandt has found a way to take a very dull kind of art and make it incredibly interesting. Right? What could be more dull than group portraits? They're only good for the people that are in the portrait. Isn't it boring looking at other people's group portraits? This is like photos of travels are so bad. Oh, look at me, I'm in front of the Parthenon. It's like, please, really? You're interested, I know, but it's dull as toast, right? Now, he had never been to Italy, ever, in his life. However, he seems to have known Caravaggio's work, and the general tonality of Rembrandt's work, browns and oranges and yellows, and a darkness that engulfs the background. There's a huge shield here hanging in their meeting hall
that actually describes with the names of all the people we see here. It's not looking to see it, right? But it's obscured by the darkness. This is all from the influence of Caravaggio. Even in Protestant Holland, Caravaggio's style, its darkness, its spotlighting, was so innovative that even Protestant artists picked up on it. Right? Rembrandt picked up on it. He saw one for sure. We know of one Caravaggio that was sold in Amsterdam during the time of Rembrandt was alive. Made an impact. This is why it's got this nifty name, the Night Watch. It's not at night. They're not on watch. It's a group portrait in Caravaggio style. So it looks like it's night. And Rembrandt has enlivened the group portrait to give them something to do. Right? To make them as if doing some sort of activity. Arming themselves to march into battle. Night Watch is a whole lot easier to remember on a slide sheet than the militia company of Captain Bernstein. Right? Thank goodness we need to add that to how we refer to the picture. Now, I seem to be missing a slide here. There we go. This is what I want next. We are very lucky to have about 2 rooms full of Rembrandts plus a bunch of his prints at the National Gallery. We've got a great little Rembrandt collection. And just as the Night Watch picked up this nickname that has nothing to do with what Willy Rembrandt planned, this picture, the mill, was for the longest time believed to be the mill that Rembrandt grew up in. We know that his father was a milliner, right? Ran a mill, ground grain for a living. And so this is Rembrandt's only painting of a mill. That led to the supposition that it was his father's mill. There's no proof. And it's altogether likely that this mill doesn't even exist. It's a constructed landscape. He's not out painting what he sees in the landscape. He's constructing it with other issues in mind, with the possibility, perhaps, of metaphor, of symbolism, using the landscape as a symbol for other ideas. Like the Night Watch, it's busy. It's full of activity, full of wonderful activities that we might actually read. Down by the water, we see a woman doing laundry. And a guy leaning against the side of the hill just sort of watching her. Typical men, right? Laundry's got to be done. I ain't doing it. Church, right? Just next to them, there's a boat crossing the river. Think about that. There's boats crossing the river, right? Do I have to tell you what that means? Right? Passage of time. Life changes, right? We move from here to there. We go through experiences. Is this landscape the idea of a metaphor for life? Us passing through our lives. Because that boat is going to land here where the woman's doing the laundry, and then a path picks up that crosses a bridge. Another huge metaphor for the phases of life and passing from one to the next. A stone bridge that we pass. A path that rises up the hill to this mill and beyond. Right? The harder path. You know, the Bible talks about that. There are easy paths, there are harder paths. Is this picking up on that idea and couching it in what seems to be just an everyday landscape? Other wonderful details. This is a little bit like he's on the opposite shore. This is now just past the bulwark on which that the mill sits, and you can see that there's a cow. There's actually 2 cows there, right? One sitting down his head, right? The other one standing here. Rembrandt actually pretty crafty. In like in 1 or 2 strokes of his brush, get exactly sort of how cows' bodies work, how the back slopes and the legs are small, right? But he distills it, and again, he's rewarding you for spending time with it. There's a woman and her child having just crossed that bridge. They're coming down to meet the boat, right? So they've come from one phase, and they're moving to the next. And I had a talk with the curator of 17th century Dutch paintings. He was, I took a class with him when I was in grad school. So when I moved here, I sat down and chatted with him. I said, what is that guy doing off the side of the bridge, behind the bushes? James, Derek, he's peeing. He's got to be peeing, right?
I mean, look at it. What else do you go off the side of the path and behind the bushes to do? Okay, ladies, you less. But, guys, we know what's going on here. Right? He's back there taking a leak. But again, remember, I've got a sense of humor. He's going to add these things that enliven the scene. I spent time with him. So I said, hey, have you seen the pissing man in the Rembrandt? And he goes, there's no pissing man there. I said, yes, there is. Go look. It's got to be. What else is he doing over there? Right? He's not lurking. He's not waiting to attack them. Right? He's back there relieving himself. Now, Rembrandt's got enough taste and decorum, and by the way, not always in this picture. I can show you pictures of people doing the nasty in the cornfield. Right? But in this particular picture, he's all couched in shadow. Right? We don't get to see his joke, as it were. Right? Well, Rembrandt, in addition to painting landscapes, also, this is just after notice the storm. Right? And the sunlight has hit the side of the mill from here. Right? The mill is from up there. And you get the sense that after the storm has passed, the mill is standing tall. Right? The date on this thing. It's a circuit date. I mean, we don't know for sure. This guy lived maybe it was around 1548 or so. That's when the 80 Years' War ended. And the last years of the 80 Years' War, there really wasn't a whole lot of time. It's obviously over. Right? They could use a peace to finally bring it to a full end. So Rembrandt is taking this image of a mill having weathered a storm at exactly the time that Holland has made it through the 80 Years' War victorious. Think there's a metaphor there? What better symbol for Holland than the windmill? Even today, right? Wouldn't you choose the windmill? Right? That's it. That's Holland in a nutshell. Rembrandt is seeing this with multiple layers of meaning. Right? All of this stuff about the passage of time and life, humorous elements that he's including in it. But then there's this idea of passing storm. Right? And somehow we survive. The storm has done some destruction to the landscape. It is quite powerful and dark. But look, new day dawning. Right? Sun coming in. This etching of the three trees is kind of the same thing. There's a massive storm off to the left. Look at how he's carved the plate with these diagonal scratches. Right? And then there's sunlight coming in from the right. And as the sunlight comes in, we've got these three trees, weathered and so on. So very, very similar theme to the mill. But this is an etching. Now, we haven't seen an etching yet. It's our first etching. Okay? We have talked about printmaking in this class before, right? Printmaking. The printmaking is where you've got a matrix using metal, but sometimes wood, that you lay a piece of paper over and you press it, and transfer ink from this to below to the paper, right? We talked about this a couple times. And we've seen woodcuts, right? And we've seen engraving. Right? Woodcuts, you carve out the white parts, you roll ink on the top flat bit, and that transfers. Okay. Engraving, you carve the line, you push ink into the line, and then you push the paper into the line after and pull the ink out. Okay. It's called, swankier word is in polio, which simply means that, right, pulling the ink out of the line rather than pulling the ink off the top of the ridges. Okay? What is an etching? An etching is also in polio, similar to engraving. But to make an engraving, you've got to take a very, very sharp tool and literally carve the plate. Right? Sundown, Gerber, what they were doing, carving the plate. Right? For etching, you coat the plate with a thin layer of wax, soft wax. And then you take anything sharp, and you draw through the wax. And then you soak it in acid. And the acid bites the line rather than having to take it out.
there's our etching plate. Nothing more than a piece of an inch thick. But that's what it is. Okay. And you're going to try and carve this one. Okay, so there's what I want to carve in. This is a quick cut. I have to carve all of this area out here, right? And leave those things in. But for etching, I want to carve these lines for engraving. So with engraving, I would take a very, very sharp point and draw each one of those lines, right? That's the most and it's tough because you're dragging it down from the steel to all that. With the etching, what you would do is you would just cover the entire surface here with a thin coating of black. You would then draw out. Right? That means that this part where you've drawn, the metal of the surface is exposed. Whereas the rest of the thing covering the wax. You then take acid, which is water-based, will not go through the wax because that's oil-based, but will hit the plate where you made the gold, where you've exposed it, right? And what the etching then does is to eat it slowly away. That's what acid does, right? So the place where you bared it, instead of having to carve this sharp line, what the etching does is just wax up here, and you bared it here, right? As it sits there, this part of the plate where it's clean, the acid surface is visible. So the longer you leave it there, the deeper that one is. Okay? You then get rid of the wax because you're done, you've got your line. And now you've got a surface that's really similar to your engraved surface. But a whole lot easier way of making it. It's more complicated on one line. It takes more steps, right? Now the process is exactly the same. You weld the entire thing together and polish it up. And that makes the ink sitting in the ink. You then put a piece of paper over the top, run a deep pressure, pushes it in here, and now the ink comes. So this one's engraving, so you've got carving. This one is etching. So the acid does the heavy lifting. Right? We're going to have etching class here. We're going to do etching. Actually take a class of etching if you want. Right? This is my one of them. Great. Really plain. So this is now an engraving. So it's printed from a metal plate, but the way in which Rembrandt makes the line on the plate is different from an engraving. Not pushing metal to metal. It's drawing through wax to expose the metal, letting the acid etch the line, and cleaning off the wax and putting ink down. Okay? So it's similar to engraving, but very, very good. Now, it's almost a pure landscape. There are figures here, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of religious subject matter. It's not anything that's immediately apparent. It's not an excuse for something else. Just as the mill is just a mill, right? Except it has these overlays. I should have had this up when I was explaining. Dürer was an engraver, right? So all of Dürer's lines are carved slowly, whereas Rembrandt's sketching. And if you look at the clouds in the upper right corner, these guys up in here, can you see sort of how fluid those lines are getting? Right? Whereas Dürer's lines are just really meticulous and methodical. Right? Again, we have a storm that has just passed, right? So some of these, he etched through the wax, and then it came back over the top of it, just scratched at the plate. Because any inconsistency is going to make a line. And so we have this storm that has moved off to the left, right? And we have now the sunlight coming from the right. And you can tell that this has really kind of been pushed away as those clouds are moving out. So it's the same theme that we saw with the mill. We have, as the central focus of the landscape, these three trees. In one of the online lectures, we talked about this painting by Van Rausdal at the National Gallery. And by the way, there are impressions of this everywhere, right? There are lots of impressions of the three trees. And this guy's got 2 or 3 impressions of this, because you can get multiples, right? Whereas the paintings are one-off.
There we see the three trees on the hill, where one is dead, one is broken, and one is thriving. Passage of time, right? 3 ages of man, maybe. Rembrandt's are all pretty good. They all seem as if they're thriving. So it doesn't have that same symbolism. But perhaps, just perhaps, it too might be something like Calvary, like seeing biblical scenes in the landscape, the 3 crosses on the hill, the 3 wooden trunks of the trees. When we read Dutch poetry, a lot of Dutch poetry focused on going out and enjoying the land, walking along the dikes, walking through the man-made fields. They talked about the fact that these could be seen as symbols of God's faithfulness, of God in the landscape. And I think both Van Rosdal and Rembrandt are using trees as multiple layered metaphors, meaning various things. 3 ages of man, the mount where Christ was crucified, as a reminder of that as you think about the landscape. Rembrandt does the same thing. He also has these other little reminders of the passage of life. I love this cute little detail behind the tree of there's isn't that a great horse? It's just the cutest little drawing, and it's like no bigger than half of your fingernail, right? It's printed out like this, right? The entire picture is about like that, okay? And there's I guess that would be a interurban travel, right? This is the MARC train of the 17th century, right? The metro, if you will. A bunch of people on the back of this horse cart, and a pedestrian as well. I don't know if he's running to catch up or not. We see that a lot, you know. But we're moving along the dikes, and we're moving from place A to place B. Life passages. Another wonderful detail is the artist. There's a little guy sitting there. I think he's sitting there. I keep looking at this more than once, right? And I can't tell if he's sitting there with his feet out and he's drawing. Doesn't it look like that? Or is he riding a horse and all we see is him on top? And what we're seeing down below, this is the part of another cart. I like the idea of the artist. You know why? Because Rembrandt writes this. And this is when he turns his attention to the landscape. And here he is out there, externally, painting the landscape. And the storm has passed, and he's looking to the brighter horizon. Now that works if he's on the cart as well, right? So he's deploying the elements of the landscape in a way that becomes incredibly interesting and adds to the meaning of it. It's not just the trees. The trees stand for something. The figures are there for a reason. We have other figures, the more places that we look here. There's a fisherman and his wife. Very cute little detail here on the left. Right? A man with a pole out in that pond, and the wife just next to patiently waiting. A cute little couple, right? And again, he's rewarding us for spending time looking at his works. Behind this couple, you can see a lot of industry going on in the landscape, a lot of activity here. More mills in the distance, some of them rendered with just real slight strokes. But pack animals, farmers, everywhere we look, there's something going on. And he's begging us to look more closely. And he continues to reward us to do so. Sometimes with a sense of humor. Lower right corner, can you make this out? There's a woman. There's a woman here. She's here in the bow, there's a shoulder. There's a man right next to her. She's stuck together. Right? He's out here. And he's covered with all this cross hatching. Right? They're hiding in the shadows. I think that they're getting away with it. Out there in, getting back to nature. In nature, right? Giving themselves over to their carnal desires and passions. Hiding from everybody but you. If you do what Rembrandt wants you to do, which is to spend a lot of time looking. Right? He's so good at that. Getting us to want to look. Like I said, we're blessed. We really are lucky to have so many really first-rate examples of Rembrandt pictures here in the National Gallery, whether they're etchings or history pictures. As I mentioned, he went to Amsterdam all the way back in 1630 or so, hoping to become a history painter. That's what he wanted to make his money at. And here we finally see him doing a mythological scene from ancient Roman mythology, where Apollo, the king of the Roman gods, accompanied by Mercury, goes to a village and begins to visit people to test them. Who will give a stranger a cup of tea? Who will welcome a stranger in? He's going to find out who's got the most moral fiber, right? And the first place that Apollo and Mercury go are the houses of the wealthy. You can see where this is going, don't you? Right? And every wealthy person refuses to take them in. And then they go to a farm owned by Philemon and his wife Baucis. And lo and behold, not only do they ask them in, give them a place to stay, but they give them all the food that they have. And start to pour the last of their wine for these characters that they don't know because they're walking around in disguise. They don't know who they are, right? And they prove the fact that, this is kind of a time-worn trope, right? Like the poor were morally upright than the wealthy. It's a long-standing thing, right? Remembrance tying into that. So that's Philemon and Baucis on the left, and that's Apollo with the beard, and Mercury with the light-time head. You can see it's totally Caravaggio looking, isn't it? With the color tone and the darkness and everything like that, right? What happened in the story is that Baucis, the wife, keeps pouring wine for Mercury and Apollo. And it's the last of her wine. And she keeps looking, she's about to apologize, saying, I'm almost out. And she looks in the pot, and it's still full. And no matter how much wine she gives to the gods, the pot is still full. And at that moment, she recognizes who they are. These can't be normal wandering pilgrims. These must be gods doing this miracle, right? And that's what Rembrandt paints, is that moment of realization. That moment where Philemon and Baucis have recognized Apollo and Mercury for being who they really are. So if we look more closely, there's Philemon and Baucis. Apollo's symbol in Greek mythology is a swan. And lo and behold, there's the swan, and Baucis, the wife, is actually touching it. We see the light behind Mercury as the light of revelation. It shows this costume, right? Gold and silver that Apollo is wearing. It shows the crown that Mercury is wearing. This is the moment, highly dramatic, of transition, of change, of coming to awareness, right? Rembrandt is terrific at that. One more work in them real quick. I've got more Rembrandts than this, but another of his etchings, called the 100 Guilder print. A guilder is a unit of money in ancient Holland. Up until the euro, it was the unit of money in Holland. And this is nicknamed the 100 Guilder print because at one point in auction, somebody paid 100 guilders for an impression, which was an unheard of amount of money. Way too much. So it got that nickname, the 100 Guilder print. But it's a religious scene. It shows the scene from Matthew, the book of Matthew. I have to look up the chapter. Matthew 19, where Christ is preaching. And as Christ is preaching, the people of Israel come up to him and try to present to him the sick and the dying for him to heal. Right? And I was going to read you all of this, but the chapter in Matthew talks about the Pharisees there arguing about what this all means. Rembrandt paints engraves them, etches them very lightly on the left. You can see how those costume studies we were talking about are coming into play here, right? He wants to get costumes to look exotic and different. A woman comes forth with a child in her arms. Peter tries to stop her. And Christ pushes him out of the way and says, let the little children come unto me. And that's the moment we have there. Christ saying that to the mother was cute. Right? There's also really great, well, that's one of the other ones, one of the second ones. Great song. Right? Again, remember the warning. Here's a sick woman that's been brought forth for him to heal. Another one over here being brought out on a wheelbarrow. She can walk. Christ is going to heal the sick. He's saying, bring them unto me. And you notice that the firmness of the drawing that you see in the woman with her baby, she's going to fuzzy around the face of Christ. Because he's revealing his divinity. Right? And so the face starts to lighten up. Right? Now, while this is all happening, a young man comes forth. Right? Here. And you you're saying my own, you're just saying my own. The young man comes forward, and he's a rich young man, and he says, what do I need to do to get into heaven? Christ says, you got to give up all your money to get to heaven. And he goes, I don't know how you do that. And Christ says to him, to the group, well, this is proved that it is harder for a rich man to enter heaven than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle. It's really tough. Because when you've got a good here, you don't think about this. Right? You don't think about your afterlife and the need to do the right thing, and everything's going good. So there's that idea of the morality of the poor and the immorality of the rich is also a theme that we're working with here. There's the young man, he's going to figure out what he's going to do next. I'm not going to give up everything I've ever earned in order to follow Christ. He's having a difficult time. He's got one hand right resting on his knee, as he's touching his altar. He exercises. I have to say, he exercises his two bones. That's making it a great thing to look at. And lo and behold, he takes Christ for literally. And there's a camel in the back. Right? It's easier for a rich man, harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to go to the eye of the needle. And so he kept the camel in there too. Just to add to that telling of this event from the book of Matthew. Okay, we'll stop it. Look, right on 6:15, that's all that stuff. I just have a regular self-portrait to show you, which is quite good. We'll start off class on Thursday talking about that and move forward into the 18th century. Okay? So I will see you guys then on Thursday.